shall we begin?
All right.
A new age has begun. An age of freedom.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
This is going to be quite a ride.
Are you like me and can remember that you saw a movie, who was in it, what happened, but the minute someone asks you, what year did it come out, you freeze up like someone asked you to do long division on paper right in front of you? I mean, that is, unless you're good in math, and that analogy doesn't really work, but you get what I'm trying to say. Well, that's why I started this new series right here on the podcast to discuss some of those big movies that came out and the year they came out in the feature I call the Monthly Rewind. I'm doing a version of this on my WordPress account, which you can find linked down below in the description/show notes area, where I give small thoughts on almost every movie I've seen that month. Although that's from the past decade, this version on the podcast is much different. Here I'll only be talking about a handful of them, getting a little bit more into detail on why I love them and like them so much and why it's stuck with me after all these years. This feature, I mostly talk about good movies. I'll throw in bad movies every now and then. This feature will range from movies all the way back from 2000. And if you're wondering why 2000, I just didn't want to include movies from the past decade to the list, since I'm doing that again on WordPress. But also because while putting the list together, I was reminded of how many good movies came out before the past decade. So I kind of just wanted to add those movies. Plus, who doesn't want to talk about all those movies, right? Right. All right. So I meant to do June last month, but for whatever reason, June just bulldozed right through me. And by the time I realized that it was the end of June, I hadn't recorded June. So I'm combining June and July together. Hopefully this thing won't be too long. I will try to speed past as much of it as possible while still giving, my full thoughts. So stick with me, please. I appreciate it. So the first one we're going to talk about, we're going to start in June, like I mentioned. We're going to start in 2000. And the first one's going to be Gone in 60 Seconds. It's a remake, of course, and it's a remake in a little bit different. It's not a complete remake of the original one that came out. I forgot when it came out, but it came out, I think it was the 70s. I want to say the 70s, maybe earlier. But it stars Nicolas Cage, and he comes out of retirement to help he's a retired master car thief, and he comes out of retirement to help his brother, who was played by Giovanni Ribisi, who crossed the wrong man and has to steal 50 cars in like a span of like 2 days to pay off his brother's debt. I love this movie as a kid. I constantly rewatched this movie over and over again. I don't know what it was about it, but I watched it. Maybe it was Fast Cars. And Angelina Jolie, maybe, with the dreadlocks. But I really enjoyed this movie. I watched it for the first time like 2 months ago, and I remember just how much why I liked it. It's just one of those fun, dumb movies you can watch and put on, and you don't have to worry about it. So there you go. 2001, I got two of them. I have Evolution. I want to give a shout out to Evolution, directed by Ivan Reitman, stars David Duchovny, Orlando Jones, Sean William Scott, and Julianne Moore. It's one of those forgotten about sci-fi comedies from the early 2000s that just worked really, really well. And has this cult following, and people who watched it will tell you how much they love it. People who have never watched it just don't know anything about it. But it's a great movie. So it's about these people who come together, David Duchovny, Orlando Jones, Sean William Scott, and Julianne Moore, who work together to fight an alien organism that is rapidly evolving on Earth. It's really funny. And again, it's one of those early 2000 sci-fi comedies that has kind of been forgotten about, and it's kind of a shame because this movie's really funny. The scene that sticks out to me is there's a scene in a mall where they're trying to lure the organism, and it's just, I don't want to give too much if you haven't seen it, but it's one of the scenes that I constantly remember when someone brings up Evolution. So there's that. The other one in 2001 was, of course, the Fast and Furious. The first Fast and the Furious, the movie that has, of course, spawned a lot of, sequels and spawned the entire franchise. People who like the franchise love the franchise. People who don't like the franchise don't like it. People who have never watched the franchise don't understand how they went from simple street racing to saving the world. But that is the franchise in total. I can't believe it started in 2001 and it's still going strong. It's been pretty much 20 years, which is unbelievable that this franchise has stood for that long. But as for the first one, it has its moments where it's good and it has its moments where it's like, what are we doing?
What the hell is this? What do you got there?
This is your car.
My car? I said a 10-second car, not a 10-minute car.
You could push this across the finish line or tow it.
Couldn't even tow that across the finish line.
No faith.
Oh, I have faith in you, but this isn't a junkyard. This is a garage.
Hey, pop the hood.
Pop the hood?
Pop the hood.
There's 2001. I got nothing for 2002. Nothing that really stood out to me anyway. So 2003, I got one movie, and that's The Bourne Identity. Of course, we know Matt Damon. This was Matt Damon's first real action movie. He had done Courage Under Fire and The Rainmaker and Good Will Hunting, Saving Private Ryan, Dogma, The Talented Mr. Ripley, and Ocean's 11 before The Bourne Identity. But this was his first real action movie based off the novel series, because the movies were based off novels. They are a little different from the movies themselves, but they are based off novels. Doug Liman directed the first movie. He directed Swingers and Go at this point, and he went on to direct Mr. and Mrs. Smith and I keep thinking of the tagline, Live, Die, Repeat. That's not what the movie's called, Edge of Tomorrow. But he did a pretty good job of this one. I think this one kind of gets forgotten about because it's one of the early ones and it's not directed by Paul Greengrass. Of course, Greengrass kind of, injected himself into the series and injected this little bit of a more action frenetic kind of energy into the franchise. But The Bourne Identity is still one of those very, very good movies if you have not watched it, or if you just haven't watched it in a while, I highly recommend you go back to watch it. It's very different from the later movies. Obviously, it's younger Matt Damon. It's more skinnier Matt Damon. He's not as buff as he became in the later series, but still very good. Let's move on to 2004. This one's pretty packed. We got Dodgeball. I mean, what can you not say about Dodgeball? I mean, really, I quote that movie every now and then in my everyday life. So. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. This might be the only Harry Potter movie that will actually appear in the monthly rewind, because this is when the series started going a little bit more darker. And mainly that probably had to do with Alfonso Cuarón, and that had to do with, of course, the themes of the book being translated into the movie. But I like this one. This one stuck out to me. It's, again, has that darker feel. It kind of matures the characters a lot more, and I just don't know. I just like it. Maybe it's because it was directed by Alfonso Cuarón. I don't know. Maybe. The next one is The Chronicles of Riddick. I know a lot of people hate this movie. A lot of people don't like it. I do. I find it thoroughly dumb, fun, enjoyable. I don't know what, I just do. I like it. And that's all I have to say about it. I don't have to defend myself to you. But the next one, let's just move on to the next one. The final one in 2004, Spider-Man 2. Arguably, to many people, the best, one of the best comic book movies of all time. Definitely one of the best Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. Definitely probably one of the best Spider-Man movies in general, to many people. I admittedly have not seen the whole thing all the way through in quite some time. I did watch, I think, the last half of it. I think I started watching it from the train scene, which is obviously the scene that everyone talks about from that point forward. But it is one of those movies when you look back and you think about all the comic book movies, and you think about especially the early comic book movies. This is one of the best ones that's out there for sure. And Sam Raimi just did something really awesome with the character. He did something amazing with Dr. Octavius, which, seems like a very cartoony character, because he is, but he made it so, it was a lot had to do with Raimi and the writing and Alfred Molina's, part to it. It's very good. It's a very good movie. I do have to watch it all the way through for the first time in a long time, but the parts I did watch a while ago, I really enjoyed, and I was like, I gotta watch this all over again for sure. So there you go. 2005. Speaking of Doug Liman, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I watched this for the first time all the way through last month. Last month, early last month. And it's July now when I'm recording this. So yeah, last month, June. I really like it. I still like it to this day. I remember watching this movie a lot when I was a kid, once it came out on DVD. I really like Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I don't know what I know what it is. It's the charisma between Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. They just work together. I mean, put aside what happened behind the scenes, what's going on over there. But I don't know. I really love this movie. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's an action comedy kind of done right, especially with the material that they have going for them in the franchise, in the movie, I should say. The next one, in 2005, Batman Begins. The movie that started off the Christopher Nolan franchise, or not really franchise, it's on 3 movies, the trilogy, I should say. But I think Batman Begins kind of gets lost in the shuffle. I think people forget how great Batman Begins is. Because, when you mention Christopher Nolan and you mention his Batman movies, you always go to The Dark Knight. And then people always go to The Dark Knight Rises because of how disappointed they were from the movie, or because they want to bring up Bane and his voice. They want to bring up, how he got to Gotham City in such a short time, even though, it's not really such a short time. I mean, it probably is, but whatever. But Batman Begins kind of gets thrown to the wayside. No one really mentions Batman Begins when they bring up conversations like that anymore. Batman Begins is a very great movie. It is, of course, the movie that started off the trilogy, but it's just, I feel like Batman Begins doesn't get appreciated as much as The Dark Knight. And I get it. The Dark Knight is the better movie, in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinion, but I think we really have to start appreciating Batman Begins a lot more because, again, it kind of gets forgotten about, which I really appreciate. Which I really don't appreciate. I appreciate the movie. Don't appreciate the fact that it's not being appreciated as much as it is. Appreciate. Let's move on to 2006. I have 2 movies here. Speaking of Fast and the Furious, a little bit ago, Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. I know a lot of people don't like Tokyo Drift. I really like Tokyo Drift. Yes, it was a departure from the series that we know. This was at the time where Universal, was trying to keep the franchise alive, and they were going to potentially do kind of these offshoot movies that weren't connected to the characters that we saw in the first movie. We were in the second movie. And they were going to try to do their own thing. And of course, then they got Vin Diesel back, and they injected, the Fast and the Furious, and they reinvigorated the Fast and the Furious movies, by having Vin Diesel come back and teasing that they were going to do another one with him. And of course they did. And, now we are where we are. But I like Tokyo Drift. I think it's really cool. Yes, it is, one of the rare, it's one of those, weird anomalies in the franchise because it's not connected to anything, but I like it. I do. I like it. And then there's District B13, which was the French movie, kind of started the whole parkour craze here in America. I really like District B13. Try saying that fast. I watched it for the first time in a long time last month. I went on a splurge last month watching a bunch of movies that I'd already seen. And I watched District B13 for the first time in a long time. And I didn't remember a lot of it. I remember the opening sequence. I remember certain parts of it, but there was a lot of the movie that I did not remember happening, and I was like, it was like watching it again for the first time, and I still enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I think it is one of those movies where it's like it's trying to highlight a lot of the parkourness. That's not a word. A lot of the parkour that was going on, a lot of the free running, and it's great. The opening sequence is amazing. It puts you right into what the whole movie is, and then there's the underground casino fight, and then there's them teaming up and them running through the city, and then the score is pretty great. So there's a lot going on in the movie, especially near the end. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I still thoroughly enjoy it to this day. Nothing in 2007, so we can move on from that. Let's move on to 2008. Where I have 3 movies, I should say, 3 movies. The first one is WALL-E. Everyone kind of was on the fence about WALL-E. We didn't know what the hell was going to happen with WALL-E, and Pixar did a very good job of hiding what the movie was really about for a long time. And then we watched it, and we all fell in love with WALL-E, as we should have, because it's WALL-E. Look at him. He's adorable. Look at him. He's adorable. The next one, Incredible Hulk. The Incredible Hulk. It's one of those weird limbo movies where the MCU doesn't fully acknowledge it, but it did happen, and mainly because of rights issues, because the movie is incredible. Right, the Incredible Hulk movie rights are stuck over at Paramount. They make the crossover to Disney and Marvel Cinematic and Marvel, like Iron Man did. But it's one of those where it's still good, and I really like I'm probably one of the lone defenders of the Incredible Hulk, because I know a lot of people don't like the Incredible Hulk, mainly because they don't acknowledge it in the MCU anymore. But I really like the Incredible Hulk. I think it's really great. I think, despite behind the scenes stuff with Edward Norton apparently being hard to work with every now and then, I really like the Incredible Hulk. I like, the new design they created for him. I like that final fight scene with the Abomination. I just really liked it. It was fun. It was enjoyable. I don't know if it was the Incredible Hulk that we need, or we needed, but it was the Incredible Hulk that I enjoyed. It was better than Hulk, the Ang Lee version, which I also saw last month for the first time in a long time. And I remember it wasn't as bad as I remember. It was just different. I think we can kind of appreciate it a lot more nowadays. Back then when I watched it, I did not enjoy it. But we're talking about the Incredible Hulk, and I like the Incredible Hulk. The final movie in 2008 is The Happening. I told you I was going to add some bad movies on here. The Happening, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, who has denounced the movie in his own way since then, admitted that they dropped the ball in the marketing because it was supposed to be a, quote, dark comedy, not a thriller horror. Mark Wahlberg also denounced the movie. Everyone I think that worked on the movie has denounced the movie and tried to expunge it from their brains and their records, but it happened, and we watched it, and it was something. Something bad, but it was something. And I remember walking out of the theater, sitting in my car, my brother's car, because I wasn't driving at that point, sitting in my brother's car, driving home, and thinking, we watched that. We really did. And that's all I gotta say about The Happening, because there's nothing else I can say about The Happening that is good at all. So let's just move on. 2009, I only got one movie. I want to highlight this one. It's Moon. And that's the movie with Sam Rockwell, for the life of Duncan Jones. That was the director. I was going to say, I can't remember the name of the director, but it came to my mind. Duncan Jones, who went on to direct the Warcraft movie that came out a handful of years ago, that people enjoyed, but not enough people enjoyed. He's directed some other stuff. He directed a Netflix movie that I can't remember the name of, but Moon, Sam Rockwell. It's pretty much just Sam Rockwell. And if you're a fan of Sam Rockwell like I am, you can watch him do anything, and he is great in anything he pops up in, and he is great in Moon. It's pretty much a solo performance. The less you know about the Moon, the better, but it's a very good movie. If you want to see Sam Rockwell do his thing, that is the movie you should watch. So, let's move on to 2010. I got 3 movies there. The first one is Splice. This is one of those movies that I don't think a lot of people saw, and I think a lot of people that have seen it are kind of somewhat on the fence about it. I don't know if they're on the fence about it. I know some of the people that I talk to that have seen it are on the fence about it. They don't fully enjoy it, but they enjoy it somewhat. So it followed 2 scientists who created this new life form, and it takes the form of a person, and it just goes off the rails from there. That's all I'll say about it. If you have not seen it, it just goes off the rails from there. The less you know about it, the better, if you do want to go watch it one day. But it's one of those movies where you're watching and you're like, yeah, you shouldn't have done this. What? This is exactly what happened if this really happened in real life. So there's that. I also got to watch this at a special screening with a director there. The director, I can't remember his name, but he directed the movie Cube, which, if you watch that should probably put you in a set of mind of what to expect from Splice. The next one on 2010, Toy Story 3. I don't care who you are. Nothing's been said about Toy Story 3. Toy Story 3, probably the best Toy Story, maybe, arguably, maybe next to 2. But that was a heartbreaker, man. There's no escaping Toy Story 3 and that ending. You cannot tell me you did not feel anything after Toy Story 3. And the next one is the A-Team. Now look, I know I just said it and everyone's like, what? A-Team was good. A-Team is exactly what it needed to be. I know a lot of people, I think even Joel Carnahan, the director of the movie, has talked about how A-Team kind of got ripped to shreds because, of course, it was based off the TV series that everyone loved, and that it was a movie that people thought was too over the top. Too over the top from a show that was late 70s, early 80s. I can't remember when it came out because it was before my time. But for people to be like, "Oh no, this was way too over the top." Like, no, are you kidding me? It's supposed to be over the top. It's based off an old TV show that was cheesy, and everyone was like, "No, it's too over the top. It's it's not good at all." Like, no, I love A-Team. I will watch A-Team anytime it's on TV. I will pop in A-Team randomly on the DVD on my Blu-ray player just for the hell of it because I love A-Team. The cast is great. Liam Neeson, Bradley Cooper, Charlotte Copley, Rampage Jackson plays I want to say Mr. T, but that's not the character's name. Baracus. You have Ryan Bloom in there as one of the bad guys. Patrick Wilson in there too. He's great in there. It's a great movie. I love A-Team. It is over the top sometimes, but they're right over the top. I just love A-Team. I will die on that hill that A-Team is a great action fun movie, and anyone that wants to take me off that hill will have to kill me because I'm not going on, and I'm not going to go easy. So just saying that.
Hey, get onto the main gun. There's a lake a half mile away from this position. What the hell am I trying to hit? Trust me. Rotate the turret 82 degrees. Fire now! Fire! Boom! Fire!
You trying to shoot down that other drone?
No. They're trying to fly that tank.
Let's move on. 2011, two movies. The first one is Troll Hunter. Troll Hunter was a found footage movie. I believe it was Swedish. I want to say it was Swedish. I can't remember. I think it was Swedish. It was a found footage movie. It's about these group of students who go into this kind of this country, this part of the country, who want to hunt down trolls because they say that they think that trolls exist, and they find a troll hunter eventually on their findings, and it's basically them kind of trying to survive this one particular event where they're kind of stuck in the middle of nowhere when there's a bunch of trolls around them. It's very good. It's one of those movies though where if you don't understand the language, there's kind of things that get lost in translation. All right, so the next one is X-Men First Class. I really like X-Men First Class. When I first saw it, I know a lot of people don't like it, and I know it was kind of a weird move at the time to go back and do a prequel in, let's just say, a different timeline, really, and ended up being a different timeline from the X-Men movies that we have gotten up until that point. And I know it was a weird move, but I remember watching it for the first time, being in theaters, watching it. After the movie was over, I just really dug it. Like, I was surprised in how much I ended up liking it. I didn't think too much about it, to be honest. I didn't think I was going to like it. I didn't think I was going to hate it. I just thought I was going to be okay by it. It was going to be, just a decent movie, just a movie to, just a summer movie that was decent with a franchise that, wasn't on its, on the perfect standing, wasn't on the perfect hill, We're coming out of The Last Stand, and we're coming out of X-Men Origins, Wolverine. So, it's not necessarily the best the franchise has going for it. And then the First Class comes out, and it kind of just changes the game. I like the cast, McAvoy, Fassbender, Lawrence, Nicholas Hoyt, Rose Byrne's in there. You have Kevin Bacon in there. So it had a great cast. It had a pretty decent story. And I just thought it was great. I was surprised by it. I didn't think I'd like it as much as I thought I would. And I think still to this day, it is one of the better new X-Men movies, to put it lightly. But that's just my opinion. Let's move on to 2012. I almost said 2002 again. 2012. I just want to mention these two. I don't have too much to say about them. There's Ted, which is the Seth MacFarlane movie where he voices the bear, the stuffed animal, the stuffed bear that comes to life, with Mark Wahlberg and Mila Kunis. I just want to mention that, I liked it. The fight scene between the bear and Mark Wahlberg is ridiculous enough as it is, but it's still pretty funny. And then there's Brave, which is the Pixar movie, the animated Pixar movie. And, this thing about Pixar, I think I mentioned this in another monthly rewind or something, or just on the regular podcast. The Pixar movies have this thing where you think that the ideas for them look okay. They don't look that great. You're like, how come this doesn't look that great? And then you go watch the movies and you're just blown away by it. I remember watching Pixar. I remember watching Brave for the first time in a theater, like in the middle of the day too. It was like that Friday that it came out. It was in the middle of the day. And I was blown away by the water effects. Because this is the first time that I think Pixar was kind of using their new system, whatever they were doing. And they had perfected the water effects at that point. Because the water in Brave looks amazing. It looked practically real. And I was just blown away by it. I was blown away by it. I was impressed by the rest of the movie, but the water effects, for whatever reason, in Brave just blew me away. So just wanted to mention that. Let's move to 2013. I have 3 movies here. The first one is Much Ado About Nothing, which it is based off the Shakespeare play. And this one, regardless of how you feel about the man, especially recently that's been coming out, it was written and directed by Joss Whedon. And it's a modern retelling of the Shakespeare play. It has a lot of people that have been in Whedon's previous stuff, like Amy Eckhart, Alexis Denisov, Nathan Fillion, Clark Gregg, Ashley Johnson's in there too, and a bunch of people that, if you're familiar with the Whedonverse in any sort of way, they've been a part of it and they're in it. And the adaptation was a passion project by Whedon, who shot it in his Santa Monica home that was designed and decorated by his wife and was shot during their 20th wedding anniversary. And it was actually shot in 12 days while Whedon was working on the Avengers movie. So that's impressive in itself. Again, despite how you feel about the man, despite all the stories that are coming out recently about Joss on the set of Justice League, Much Ado About Nothing, I had heard about the play. I never actually read it, but I was impressed. It was shot I think it was shot in black and white, or the colors were off. I can't remember which one of the two, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it when I watched it. I really did. And it was probably because of the cast, to be honest, because the cast was great. They were all great in it, and the roles they were playing. The next one is This Is the End, which of course is the movie with James Franco, Craig Robinson, I can't remember the other names now. What's his name? Jonah Hill. That's the one I was thinking about. Jonah Hill's in there. They're all stuck in James Franco's house when the end of the world hits. Danny McBride's also in there. That was the other name I was thinking about. Danny McBride. Emma Watson has that great little supporting role in there, as she's, she thinks that they're trying to do something to her when she pops up back in the house. I thought it was funny. I thought it was great at the time. It has that weird moment where they're kind of just going at each other, and you're just like how are they're just going at each other, and when you find out that later on, most of it was ad-libbed, it's just like, why are they hating at each other so much? How are these people friends?
You're gonna send me out there with a fucking gun filled with blanks? Oh, fuck you. Don't turn this around on us. You tried to shoot us, you fucking dickhead. Fucking murdering motherfucker. Whatever. Fucking civilization is broken down. There's no more reason for this false bullshit. You guys act like you're so fucking high and mighty, like you've never made a goddamn mistake before. Franco, you're just a pretentious fucking nerd. Fuck you. Jonah, you fucking cunt. Craig, you didn't have my back there. You fucking disappoint me. And Seth, you duplicitous taint. What? And of course there's Jay, the self-righteous, cock-sucking, two-faced backstabber. What the fuck are you talking about?
But it's good. I liked it. It was funny at the time. I still enjoy it. I still remember the exorcism scene, which is probably one of my favorite parts of the whole movie, to be honest. So I thought that was pretty cool. But the last movie in 2013 is, of course, Man of Steel. A lot of fans are still divided on Man of Steel, which I get. I understand, especially that one scene. I still think that one scene in the movie, the neck snapping scene, I should just say. I mean, the movie's years old now. Anyone who has any interest in watching Man of Steel has probably already seen Man of Steel. But the neck snapping scene, I was one of the defenders when that scene first happened. I know a lot of people were upset about it. I know a lot of people were like, this isn't Superman. This isn't this isn't that. And everyone's like, Superman doesn't kill, although everyone forgets about the fact that he's probably killed people before or has led to their eventual deaths. But, let's just let's just ignore all that because we're talking about this current Man of Steel and this current Superman. I liked it. I thought it was, I think it's still a pretty good movie. I still do. It doesn't have its problems, sure. I think it's just a tiny bit on the long side. I think probably scrape, like 5-10 minutes of the movie. But I still liked it. I enjoyed it. I thought Henry Cavill, who I had not seen anything really he was in up until that point. So he was pretty much a fresh face for me. I know he had done stuff. I know he was on The Tudors before he ended up taking the role. But Amy Adams is in there, Russell Crowe's in there, Lawrence Fishburne, all these, Michael Shannon playing Zod, which is, the way he plays Zod in this movie is completely different from the way Terrence Stamp played him, which was fine, which was great. I think, that kind of Zod in today's world is probably what we needed, or what that movie needed, or what the tone of it anyway was the Zod that the way he played him was good. I know a lot of people don't like Man of Steel, particularly because of that neck snapping scene. I still enjoy it. I think it's still a very enjoyable movie. I'm not going to say it's the best DC movie that there is, but it is, the movie that gave us Henry Cavill Superman, which, Warner Brothers has since messed up. But, what can you do? You can't win all the battles. Let's move on to 2014. I have Edge of Tomorrow, which, again, Doug Liman's on the list. I really like Doug Liman. Can you tell? Edge of Tomorrow on the list. It's a movie about seeing Tom Cruise die a bunch. I mean, who doesn't want to watch that? And you got Emily Blunt playing a badass, strong female character. I mean, what more do you want? So there's Edge of Tomorrow. Snowpiercer, which, of course, everyone has either loved or has fallen in love after, people getting more familiar with Bong Joon-ho's filmography after Parasite. I love Snowpiercer the first time I saw it. I also watched that last month, or maybe even 2 months ago. But I saw it recently, and I just fell in love with it because I hadn't seen it in so long, and I really, I haven't gotten the chance to watch the TV show. I have them all recorded on my DVR, so I'm gonna get to that soon. But Snowpiercer is very, very good. You got Chris Evans, Tilda Swinton, John Hurt's in there, the late John Hurt, Jamie Bell's in there as well. It's very, very good. It's very, very good if you have not watched it. And then The Rover, which is getting a nice little shout out here. The Rover, it's the first movie that I actually saw Robert Pattinson in, because I didn't watch the Twilight movies. I know he was in them, but I just never watched them. I never watched anything he was a part of. And then I watched The Rover, which also stars Guy Pearce. It stars Guy Pearce as a guy whose car gets stolen in this kind of somewhat post-apocalyptic world. Kind of takes place in the middle of the desert, to be honest. Very, 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 not a lot of people around. But it's kind of like this post-apocalyptic world, and his car gets stolen by this gang, and the only kind of surviving person around, or the person that he captures anyway, is Robert Pattinson, and Robert Pattinson's brother is the one who stole the car. So it's basically kind of just Guy Pearce and Robert Pattinson together for the majority of the movie, trying to get to know, Robert Pattinson's just kind of like this little chatterbox, and Guy Pearce isn't really saying too much. It's a good movie, but it's a tough movie to watch, especially kind of near the end. It's a very quiet movie too. So when things suddenly get loud, it kind of just shook me, because it kind of jolted me, because I wasn't kind of anticipating it. But it's one of those movies where it started the whole, okay, now I know what Robert Pattinson's all about. So The Rover. 2015, we got two movies. Inside Out, again, Pixar. The quote running out of ideas movie that everyone was saying before it came out, and then it came out and everyone was like, yeah, never doubt Pixar. So yeah, there you go. And then Spy, the Melissa McCarthy movie where she plays a spy, and he had Jason Statham in it. Well, pretty much steals the movie, honestly.
You really think you're ready for the field? I once used defibrillators on myself. I put shards of glass in my fucking eye. I've jumped from a high-rise building using only a raincoat as a parachute, and broke both legs upon landing. And I still had to pretend I was in a fucking Cirque du Soleil show. I've swallowed enough microchips and shit them back out again to make a computer. This arm has been ripped off completely and reattached with this fucking arm.
I don't know that that's possible. I mean, medically.
During the threat of an assassination attempt, I appeared convincingly in front of Congress as Barack Obama.
In blackface? That's not appropriate.
I watched the couple that raised me explode in a van. I watched the woman I love get tossed from a plane and hit by another plane mid-air. I drove a car off a freeway on top of a train while I was on fire. Not the car. I was on fire.
Jesus, you're intense.
So I don't know if you haven't seen Spy. I highly recommend. I know a lot of people don't like Melissa McCarthy and don't like her movies, but Melissa McCarthy and Paul Feig, when their heads are together and they have a solid idea, they knock it out of the park. And Spy is one of those movies that knocks it out of the park for sure. 2016, we got 3 movies. The Shallows, which I didn't think I'd like. It's Blake Lively. She gets attacked by a shark and then ends up in a shallow part of the ocean. The beach is in eyesight, but you can't reach it without getting attacked by a shark again. I didn't think I liked this movie. I went to go watch it. I think it was in the middle of the week when I went to go watch it, and I ended up really liking it. I ended up really, really liking it. I think it's a solid. It is as solid can be thriller of a movie, and a shark movie at that. And I think if you were reluctant on The Shallows, I highly recommend you watch it. It's very, very good. I was surprised. I was definitely surprised by that movie. Then we have The Conjuring 2. I love the first Conjuring. I'm a sucker for horror movies, so I love the first Conjuring movie. Conjuring 2 came out, and I don't know if I liked it as much as the first one. It does have, new parts. We got the nun. We have what was the other one? What was the long stretchy guy? I forgot his name already. Who's also getting a spinoff apparently, but we haven't really heard anything from it. But I liked it. I thought it was good. I don't know if it was as good as the first movie, but I really enjoyed it when I watched it. So, and James Wan is a master of horror, and I can't wait for his new movie Malignant to finally come out when it does come out. And finally, the last movie, 2016, Pop Star. Pop Star Never Stop Stopping. It is the kind of mockumentary comedy that stars Andy Samberg as this pop star singer who was part of a boy band and then went off and did his own thing, and he's kind of not doing as successful as he thought he was, especially after his next big record. It's a very funny movie. I did not expect to like Pop Star Never. I thought it would just be this really dumb comedy that I would not have enjoyed at all. I'm not the biggest Andy Samberg fan, and then we went to go watch it. This was also, I think, in the middle of the week, or maybe it was a weekend. It was a slow weekend, but I went to go watch it, and I could not stop laughing. I honestly could not stop. I thought it's funny, it's generally funny at times, and then it's funny, unintentionally funny. It's not trying to be funny, but it ends up being funny. And then there's jokes that don't work at all, but I thoroughly was surprised. I loved Pop Star Never Stop. I think it was probably my favorite comedy of 2016 that year when I saw it, because it was just so out of the blue for me. It was just kind of came out of left field because I did not expect to like it at all. So yeah. 2017, we're almost done. Wonder Woman. The first one we're going to mention is Wonder Woman. Obviously, Gal Gadot had a lot of doubters. And this, of course, she already had appeared in Batman v Superman. She already had doubters of that. But then there was the doubts of whether she can actually lead a whole Wonder Woman movie herself. Then we had Chris Pine in there. And no one really knew what the movie was about. We just kind of went in because it was a Wonder Woman movie. It was the first kind of not the first real female superhero movie, because we know we had Catwoman at that point, but we tend to forget about Catwoman because we don't want to watch Catwoman and then Aeon Flux. But in the new age of superhero movies, Wonder Woman was kind of the first real female superhero movie that had come out that I can remember, unless I'm missing something. Then if there is, let me know. But from what I can remember, this in the modern age of superhero movies, she was the first kind of female superhero movie to get her own. And this was after years of Warner Brothers trying to get Wonder Woman off the ground, of stories coming out that executives didn't think a Wonder Woman movie would work because people wouldn't go watch it and people don't understand her and yada, yada, yada. And then we finally get it, and it's one of the most successful movies out there. It is arguably probably the best DC superhero movie that has come out. You put it up there with Shazam and whatever other Birds of Prey, whatever other movie you want to put up there. But it is arguably probably the best DC movie to have come out in the recent age of superhero movies. Gal Gadot does a tremendous job of balancing a strong-willed at that female superhero and kind of this naive fish out of water story. And then you have Chris Pine playing the straight man, and the chemistry those two have together is amazing. And of course, we have the sequel coming out next year. It was supposed to come out this year, and I'm pretty sure it got pushed to next year, right? All these movies getting pushed. I just keep forgetting. But yeah, Wonder Woman. The next movie in 2017 is Baby Driver. Yes, it now has become a problematic movie because obviously Kevin Spacey stuff and now Ansel Elgort stuff. But Baby Driver, if you can ignore all that, it is still pretty good. I saw it for the first time in its entirety in a while a couple months ago, and I forgot how much I really enjoyed that movie. I forgot how good it was. I forgot how good the soundtrack was. I forgot how great the action scenes are. I forgot how great the cast is. Again, ignoring Kevin Spacey and now Ansel Elgort. You got John Hamm in there. I'm not the biggest John Hamm fan out there, but I think it was really good in Baby Driver. Jamie Foxx having a lot of fun, obviously, in that role. Isaac Gonzalez is in there too. John Bernthal's in there, who doesn't get enough screen time, but he should. So, there's talk of a sequel happening. I really enjoy Baby Driver. I think it's really good. If you can ignore Kevin Spacey and Ansel Elgort and their problems, Baby Driver still holds up very much. And finally, 2018, we have 3 movies. Hearts Beat Loud, which is a movie that I don't think a lot of people saw, but it's very, very good, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's about a father and a daughter. The daughter's played by Kiersey Clemons, and the father's played by Nick Offerman. Kiersey Clemons is about to go away to college, and before she leaves, they kind of start this little kind of band of their own, playing music, and the father thinks it's really good, and Kiersey Clemons, very undecided. She has these plans about leaving college, and then the music starts, and then she meets somebody, and it kind of just it's a what's going to happen next, and where does the story go? Ted Danson's in the movie. He plays Nick Offerman's best friend. Toni Collette's in there too. She has a small role, but a role that's connected to Nick Offerman's character. I really liked Hearts Beat Loud. I like it. It's just kind of it was one of those kind of smaller independent movies that came out during the summer that I really, really loved, and it kind of fit in the trend of these summer independent movies all about music. There was Begin Again, and then there was Sing Street, and then there's this, and I really enjoyed it. I think it was Band-Aid, although that came out mostly in VOD, but Hearts Beat Loud is very, very good. If you've not watched it, I highly recommend you do. It's great. The soundtrack is great. The songs they come up with is pretty good. Hearts Beat Loud is one of them. It's actually one of the first ones of the movie, but the other songs they play in the movie are fantastic. So highly recommend it. It's very, very good. It's very charming, very heartwarming. Highly recommend it. The next one is Leave No Trace, which is another kind of more quieter movie that came out during the summer. It stars Ben Foster, Thomasin McKenzie. The first movie that I think a lot of people saw Thomasin McKenzie, and she was the girl from Jojo Rabbit. This is the first thing that I saw her in. So they play father and daughter. There's a little theme there. Father and daughter who are living in the woods, and when they end up getting caught living in the woods, they kind of get put into this program to put them back into kind of best way to put it is civilization. So they end up going to live in this person's house on their farm, and they realize that it's not for them, and they go back out into the woods. It's a very interesting story. Ben Foster plays a former soldier. That's something you find out early on in the movie. So he has PTSD, and Thomasin McKenzie is kind of just taking care of him, and it's only them. It's very good. Thomasin McKenzie is fantastic in it. Ben Foster's fantastic. I think Ben Foster is one of those guys that got the short end of the stick in Hollywood. He was Angel in X-Men The Last Stand, which I think a lot of people thought would be his big breakout role. He had done stuff before then, but I think that was a thing that everyone thought would break him out, and then the character ended up being a nothing character in the movie. He did Alpha Dog, which I think was another thing that I think people thought that he was going to be big in. But Ben Foster kind of just went away, and he was doing these little bit parts. He had that small role in 30 Days of Night, which I think we'll end up talking about eventually when we get to October. But he's just one of those guys who I think if you give him the right material and you let him do his thing, he will knock it out of the park. And this is one of those movies where he knocks it out of the park. But I think the main highlight here is Thomasin McKenzie, who does a fantastic job. And you can see why she's getting a lot more roles because of Jojo Rabbit. But this, if you really want to look back at anything that she's done, definitely look at Leave No Trace. She's amazing in it. She has this great, heartbreaking, emotional scene near the end of the movie with Ben Foster. And it's great. And you can see why that she, is going to have a bright future in Hollywood if she ends up picking, the right roles and everything. So Leave No Trace, definitely one of those movies. It's not a tough watch, but it is one of those movies where you probably don't want to watch it back to, you don't want to watch it frequently because it puts you in such a headspace, in such a mood that you don't want to go back to it. But it's a very good movie. It's just one of those movies where, you don't want to watch it continually because it will put you in that mood where you're just like, I don't want to do it anymore. All right. So the last one is Upgrade. Of course, Lee Winnell, Logan Marshall Green. It was one of the big surprise hits of 2018. It's getting a TV series now, which they're working on, which is awesome. But I really loved Upgrade. Upgrade was one of those movies where everyone saw the trailer and were like, what the hell is this? And we went to go watch it. Enough people went to go watch it, and I thought it was great. I don't think a lot of people went to go watch it, but enough people went to go watch it where it does have this kind of cult following. And I think it's great. I think it's awesome. I think the idea of it is frightening because it just the idea of, something happens to you and you get this implant placed in your body and it could take over if when you allow it. And what happens if it probably something happens, and it's a very good movie. The action in it is amazing. Lee Winnell pretty much certified himself as a go-to director with Upgrade. I mean, I know he certified himself to everybody with The Invisible Man, but I think for us, like kind of the nerdy hardcore fans, especially the ones that saw Upgrade, we were like, yeah, of course, everyone's surprised that he did an amazing job with The Invisible Man, but we all knew he can pull it off when we saw Upgrade. So I really love Upgrade. Upgrade's really good. It's a movie that you think is going one place and it ends up going somewhere else. And when it goes to that place, you're like, oh, they went there. And all right, that's okay. You guys went there. All right, I see you. I respect you. In case this gets split up, I said I was going to split it up in June. I decided maybe I'll put it together. So I don't know if I actually have or have not. So I will put this, if I end up actually doing, there we go, the split of June and July, then I will erase this. If not, then here we are. So July, let's start off with July now. 2000. First movie is a movie that just celebrated its 20th anniversary. That is X-Men. It's amazing that it's been 20 years, and the first movie that have come out was X-Men, of course. The movie that's arguably, let's just say it, jump-started the comic book movie trend in Hollywood. It was a risk at the time. It is, looking back at it now, it's still kind of risky considering, everything's been going on. We got Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, even though he wasn't the original choice. It was originally Douglas Scott, but then he dropped out to do Mission Impossible 2, and we ended up getting Hugh Jackman, and the rest, as they say, is history. Of course, ended up getting a lot of stuff from the first X-Men movie. We got the leather suits, we got some quippy dialogue, we have the infamous line from Storm.
Do you know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? The same thing that happens to everything else.
Yeah, and a bunch of other stuff. So there you go. Let's move on from 2001. Nothing from 2001. Nothing stuck up with me. So let's move on to 2002, which is Halloween Resurrection. Oh boy. Not as, I don't want to say not as bad as I remember it being. It wasn't as cheesy as I remember it being. Because I thought it was really cheesy. It has still, to this day, one of the most cheesiest horror movie lines in history.
Trick or treat, motherfucker.
Whew. That's all I'm going to say about Halloween Resurrection, to be honest. That's all I have to say. Let's move on. 2003. We have three movies here. We have Bad Boys 2, of course, a sequel to Bad Boys, of many years after the fact. But I really like Bad Boys 2. I think it has some pretty solid action scenes. I don't know if I like it as much as the first Bad Boys, but I think the action was definitely upped. They definitely were like, yeah, we can put money here, or we can put money in the action scenes, and they obviously chose the action scenes.
Who the fuck are you?
I'm Mr. Burnett. I'm Reggie.
What you doing here?
Came to take out Megan.
What?
I came to take out Megan.
How old are you?
I'm 15, Mr. Burnett.
Motherfucker, you look 30.
The next one is League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which I ended up watching like 10 minutes of it last month and was like, no. No, not for me. It's the movie that pretty much killed Sean Connery's acting career. It was after that he was like, no, I'm done. I'm done being in movies. This is it. This is it for me. Which is a shame because League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, for as far as I can tell, comic wise, very good. Has some pretty good themes in it. Has a bunch of characters, literary characters, in some pretty interesting situations. They are trying to remake League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I don't know if I can't remember if it was a movie or a TV series, but they are going to try to remake it. It was in the news last year, so we'll have to see how that turns out. But for the first movie, not very good. Not very good at all. But then finally, we have Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, which is the first movie of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Say what you will about the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. They have kind of gone downhill since then. But you cannot tell me that the first one was not good, even borderline great. I still believe that the first one is the best one. I really like the first one. If anything, the first one is the best one. It has action in it. It has drama. It has some very tinge of horror in there with, obviously the curse that is upon the Black Pearl, with the skeletons and everything. It's, to me, the best of the Pirates movies. And yes, they have gone downhill. Although Dead Man's Chest, we'll talk about Dead Man's Chest in a little bit, because I think that is the second best Pirates of the Caribbean movie. But the first one is great. I mean, you can't really go wrong with the first one. I think the first one, again, is the best one. Orlando Bloom, Keira Knightley, Johnny Depp, Jeffrey Rush playing Captain Barbossa. I think it's great. I think it's the best one. And I honestly think it's the best one. And for the franchise to go downhill as far as it went, it's kind of a shame because the first one has so much potential. And of course, now they're trying to reboot it. They have their own little reboot, and they have a separate one with Margot Robbie, which was announced a few weeks ago. All right, why not? Try to reinvigorate it, because try to get it back to the glory that was the first one. Because the first one, to me, is the best one. There's just, again, it's good, borderline, even great.
Well, thank you, Jack.
You're welcome.
Not you. We named the monkey Jack.
Let's move on to 2004. We got 3 movies here for you guys. The first one is Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. It is, I don't know, it's just one of those movies that I love. It's just one of those movies that I don't know why I love it. I just love it. I think it's funny that it's so realistic. The scene when they're in the hallway and they're like, I forgot my cell phone. And they're like, oh, I forgot mine too. And they look back down the hallway and their apartment's literally right around the corner, like 10 feet. And they're like, no, we've gone too far. We can't go back. Come on. How do you not like that? Come on. So yeah, Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. It's hard to believe that Anchorman also came out the same month, in the same year, in the same month as Harold and Kumar, because Anchorman obviously has this tremendous history. Anchorman is probably one of the most quotable Will Ferrell comedies, and some say maybe even his best comedy. Again, I said some, arguably, probably to some. So yeah, it is just Anchorman. I mean, what can the news fight? I mean, come on, the alley fight. It's awesome.
They've done studies, 60% of the time it works every time.
That doesn't make sense.
Next is finally in 2004. It's a movie that I really enjoy. I know it gets a lot of hate. Yes, I can see why it gets a lot of hate, but it's also a movie that I really enjoy. King Arthur, the one directed by Anton Fuqua. Excuse me, the one with Clive Owen as Arthur. You had Keira Knightley in there as Guinevere, Mr. Fantastic as Lancelot. I'm just going to call him Mr. Fantastic because I always mispronounce his last name. I always mispronounce his name. The guy who plays Mr. Fantastic in the Fantastic Four movies. No, not Miles Teller. The older ones. Yeah, that guy playing Lancelot. You had Ray Stevenson in there. You had Hugh Dance, Ray Winstone, Stephen Dillion playing Merlin, Stellan Skarsgård playing the villain, who I didn't even recognize it was Stellan Skarsgård. And even as I look back into it, even as as I look at pictures of him, it's like, is that really Stellan Skarsgård? Like, I can't tell that's him at all. So I think it's really cool. I think it's a lot of fun. It suffered from studio interference and a rating deduction. It was originally rated R and it became PG-13. And despite pushback from Fuqua and producer Jerry Bruckheimer about the rating and studio interferences, so it is one of those movies that really suffered. Not probably, it really suffered from studio interference. If you go back and you look at everything that was supposed to be, everything they wanted it to be, and then they ended up doing sometimes none of that, sometimes like compromise with that. So, but I really enjoy King Arthur. I think it's a lot of fun. I do. I think it's just me. Let's move on. 2005, Hustle and Flow. That is a movie that pretty much introduced me to Terrence Howard. No, so it's also the movie that introduced me to Taraji P. Henson. She's in there. Yeah, that's her, right? Yeah, that's her. It's great. It's just it was one of the first movies that I remember watching in the movie theater that was rated R, that I remember was like, this is a movie that's gonna stick with me. Besides the music, it's the performances that are gonna stick with me. It's one of those movies that just stuck with me. That stuck with me and still sticks with me. Yeah. The next one, Sky High, doesn't get as much love as it should. Obviously, earlier this week, Kelly Preston passed away. She was the mother in Sky High, but Sky High was very, very, to me at the time, was very, very good, and it's one of those movies that, again, I think it's underappreciated nowadays, but people should definitely watch it. And it's Mary Elizabeth Winston's in there, Kurt Russell's in there, he plays the father, Bruce Campbell's in there, which I always forget he's in, and then I like watch a picture, or I remember, I was like, oh, that's right, he was in it. He plays the coach in the movie. Daniela Panabaker's in there. It's one of those movies where you just kind of, when you're a kid, it's like, this is the stuff that I want. And you look back at it now, it's like, yeah, that's the stuff I liked back then. And it's like, why can't more, kids movies kind of be like this? It's fun, it's goofy, it's serious when it needs to be. It's awesome. I like it. Sky High. Go appreciate it. 2006, one movie, Dead Man's Chest. Talked about Pirates of the Caribbean already. Dead Man's Chest, a good sequel. Visually, it's amazing. You got the Kraken in there. You got Davy Jones as the whole, he's not like a person. He's more like a monster, which I really enjoy, and it's really creepy. And it's just like, he's kind of slimy sometimes. And the design of Davy Jones is amazing. It's great. You got the Kraken in there. You got that awesome visual. The visual sticks to me, and it stayed with me even to this day. It's when Keira Knightley's fighting off Barbossa's two kind of, goofy henchmen. I forgot their names, but she's fighting them, and then you see the wheel in the back, and you see Will and it's not, or is it Jack? No, I think it's Will, Orlando Bloom's character, and the guy was engaged to Keira Knightley in the first movie. I forget his name, but they're fighting on top of the wheel, and it's kind of spinning. And I just love that visual of the wheel, kind of this big ass wheel spinning behind them, and Keira Knightley and the two guys just looking at each other while they're fighting over the chest that holds a plot point that I'm not going to tell you in case you haven't watched it yet. But I really liked Dead Man's Chest. I think it's honestly the second best Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and then after that it kind of just goes downhill, unfortunately. But yeah, I just want to mention that.
Because you and I are alike. And there will come a moment when you have a chance to show it. To do the right thing.
I love those moments. I like to wave at them as they pass by.
2007, we got two movies. We have Transformers. Yes, I have Transformers on the list. I have the first Transformers on the list. Because Transformers, the first one, is probably arguably the best one. I have a soft spot for Transformers 3 because it was filmed here in the Chicagoland area. And I really like the score for Transformers 3, but the first Transformers, arguably, probably the best one. It's got great action in it. It's a little goofy, even for today's standards, but I really like the first one, so I'm just going to put it on there. And then Sunshine, which I know a lot of people probably didn't watch it in theaters. They probably watched it after the fact. I find myself lucky that I watched it in the theater. I saw it in this movie theater that had the most uncomfortable seats on the planet. If you're from the Chicagoland area, I watched it in Piper's Alley. And if you're from Chicagoland area, or if you visit the Chicagoland area and you've gone to Piper's Alley, you know how uncomfortable the seats and how uncomfortable the seats are in that, or were in that movie theater, because Piper's Alley is no more. But I watched it there, and I was blown away by it. Yes, the whole change of genre in the end is kind of jolting, but I love that movie. I thought it was great. The cast is amazing when you look back at it. You got Chris Evans, Michelle Yeoh, Cillian Murphy. I think Rose Byrne is the female. I think that's her. And just a bunch of other people in there too. I can't think of them all. I didn't write them down either. But it's great. If you have not watched Sunshine, go watch it. The less you know about it, the better. Yes, there's a big genre change that everyone talks about, and it's the thing that everyone's like, oh, this is the thing that changes the movie and makes the movie not good anymore. No. Just enjoy it. Just enjoy it for what it is. I really liked it. So let's talk about 2008. We have Step Brothers and The Dark Knight. Very interesting counter-programming movies. The Step Brothers, of course, the Will Ferrell movie with John C. Reilly. A lot of people really like that movie. Very quotable as well. Probably has one of the best lines that is so fitting in today's climate and world, in the COVID world that we live in.
This house is a fucking prison on planet bullshit. In the galaxy of this sucks camel dicks.
And then we have The Dark Knight, of course, we briefly talked about when we talked about Batman Begins. Arguably one of, if not the best comic book movie ever made that doesn't feel like a comic book movie, which is probably why it's on the top of that list. Christopher Nolan did an amazing job just upping the ante, making a sequel that actually works, that isn't horrible. You got, of course, Heath Ledger's amazing performance as the Joker. Just so many things in that movie that works so well. And it's just an awesome. I mean, I don't know what more can be said about The Dark Knight that hasn't already been said before. So let's go to 2009. We have one movie there. It's called The Collector. It's one of those movies that I didn't really know about too much. I've seen probably a couple trailers for it. And then we went to go watch the movie because it was one of those slow weekends when it came out, and I went to go watch it. And it's a story of kind of a thief who's trying to make good, and he takes his job because it would pretty much guarantee him his freedom and also give him a chance to go see his wife and his kid again. And it's supposed to be pretty much an easy job. He's gonna steal some stuff from this house. It's a secluded house in the middle of nowhere. The family's not even supposed to be there. And when he gets there, he finds that one of the daughters of the people that live there is there with her boyfriend, but they're not alone because they're in there with someone who, as the title says, collects people. It's a very good movie. It's one of those like late 2000 movies where it's not changing the genre. It's not really doing too much of the genre, but it's doing enough where it's its own thing. It's not really trying to copy too much. It does kind of have a jigsaw-y moment in there, but for the most part, it's kind of its own. It's a very nice little cool cat and mouse game with the guy who was pretty much a bad guy, a villain in any other sense of the word, and becoming the good guy because there's another bad guy in there that's just worse than he is. It's very good. If you have not seen it, The Collector, highly recommend it. They did make a sequel called The Collector 2, The Collection. I can't remember what it was called. Not as good as the first one. I think they tried a little bit too hard on the sequel, but the first one, The Collector, very, very good. Highly recommend if you have not watched it yet. Let's move on to 2010. We have 3 movies there, continuing the Christopher Nolan love on the podcast. Inception came out. Just one of those movies that kind of just blew everyone away. It was, everyone makes fun of it, whatever, because a dream within a dream within a dream stuff, that's fine. But Christopher Nolan did this great job, and of course, the bong sound has been, used as a parody from a lot of times. It's one of those movies when, if you can get past all the make fun of, all the memes and the people making fun of it's very, very good. It's thought provoking. It does kind of, stumble upon itself because of the concept-wise and everything, but it's very, very good. I very, very appreciate it. I don't know if it's one of my favorite Christopher Nolan films, but it is definitely up there. The next one is The Last Airbender. What can be said about The Last Airbender? It's not good. That's one. That's probably the main thing. It's not good. For a movie that is based off a popular TV series that everyone was, I went to I don't think it was a midnight screening, but it was a pretty late screening with some people I knew from high school. And we went to go watch it, and we were surrounded by a bunch of people who were obviously very excited about it, and as it was a collective dislike when we were walking out of the movie theater, because we were all just kind of chilling there. People were coming out, and you can just hear people saying like, this wasn't good. Like, why would they do that? Why would they do this and this and that? And it wasn't very good. And I remember the movie was supposed to be in 3D. We didn't watch it, and we didn't end up watching it in 3D. But I don't think it mattered, because there was a lot of close-ups in this movie. For whatever, I remember there being a lot of close-ups for that movie, and I think a lot of the key stuff, the big stuff, like the waterfall at the end of the movie, was given away in the trailer. So when it finally happens in the movie, it's like, I'm not really that impressed. So there you go, Last Airbender. Not impressed. There you go. The last movie in 2010 is Rec 2 or Record 2. It's pretty much known as Rec 2. I love the first Rec. I think the first Rec is amazing. It's one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Definitely in my top 5. Rec 2 pretty much ranks up there too. I would like to combine the two together because Rec 2 pretty much takes place like an hour or something like that after the first one ends. So I really liked. It's definitely kind of a joint feature. If you watch the first Rec, watch Rec 2 immediately afterwards, because it's just one streamlined story. So the first Rec, in case you never watched them, the first Rec follows this host of a show that kind of follows people. It kind of follows people on their job. So she's shadowing this fire crew in the middle of the night, and they get a call. They go to this building, and they go into the building to find someone who is really, really sick. There's not really a fire, but I don't understand why they went there, but I guess they got there before the police, and they go in there, and they're trying to subdue this woman who is clearly, supposedly on something, but that's not really what she's on. She ends up being kind of a zombie. I say kind of a zombie because Rec 2 kind of brings a new element to the movie that changes everything from the first movie. So that's kind of what's going on with that. And it kind of it's a found footage movie. It follows the crew as they're trying to survive the being, kind of quarantined in to the building that they're in, because there's people on the outside not letting them go out. They did end up making a remake for a Rec called Quarantine, which was not very good. It was not very good at all. I don't know if we'll probably end up talking about that in the future. But Rec 2, since we're talking about Rec 2 primarily, follows kind of like a SWAT team almost. I don't think they're actually a SWAT team there, but they're a team that have guns, but they're not a SWAT team. I don't think they're actually called a SWAT team, but they go in there, and it's still a found footage movie. It's following them through their body cams and through their helmet cams. And they're going in there to figure out what the hell happened and what the hell's going on. So Rec 2 is very, very good. Again, recommend watching Rec and Rec 2 together, because it's just kind of one streamlined story that's connected. And it takes place like an hour after the first movie. So highly recommend you go watch that. Let's move on to 2011. I got 3 movies here. The first one is Horrible Bosses. I remember watching Horrible Bosses for the first time, and my whole theater, it was one of the rare instances where my whole theater was laughing so hard that we missed jokes. So the second time I went to go watch it in theaters, that other crowd, they were laughing with the jokes, but they weren't laughing as hard as the jokes. So I heard all the jokes that I missed the first time around because people were laughing so hard. So it's definitely one of those movies, those movie experiences that really stuck with me. The movie itself is funny. Charlie Day, Jason Sudeikis, oh my God, what's his name? Jason Bateman. I couldn't think of his name. All 3 of them are together, and they're trying to. They all have horrible bosses. Title of the movie that they don't like, and they plan on killing them. So what they end up doing is kind of setting up this thing, but something else happens, and they kind of get swooled into this kind of conspiracy and this cover-up that kind of just leads them on this little weird mischief adventure. Also ends up leading them to Jamie Foxx's character called MF Jones, which MF Jones, when you find out what it stands for, is absolutely hilarious and so fitting. And it's exactly what you think it is, but the way he says it in the movie is just, it's perfect. So Horrible Bosses, highly recommend you watch it if you haven't already. The next one is Captain America: The First Avenger. Arguably, the Captain America series is the best series in the MCU. And Captain America: The First Avenger, yeah, it is a comic book movie. Yeah, it has comic book elements, but it's almost like a war film. And that's what I really, really love about Captain America: The First Avenger. Chris Evans does an amazing job as both the pre-serum Steve Rogers and the post-serum Steve Rogers. His chemistry with Haley Atwell is out of the park. Probably the best MCU couple that there is. Haley Atwell, so amazing. I would arguably say introduced Haley Atwell to the world. That's the first thing that I saw her in, so it was really cool. You have Stanley Tucci in there. You have Hugo Weaving in there as the Red Skull, which the fact that they even pulled off that Red Skull stuff was really, really great. And then you have, of course, the Tesseract, which is the MacGuffin of the movie, but still works. I love Captain America: The First Avenger. I love the Captain America series as a whole. So, yeah. Go check that out. And finally, the last movie in 2011 is Attack the Block, the movie that pretty much introduced us to John Boyega. If you have not watched it yet, I highly recommend you do. It is a sci-fi movie. It's about these group of kids who live in a block. It's basically a big apartment building, but they call it a block in the UK. And they find this alien that's crash landed on Earth, and they end up taking it to their apartment. But what they don't realize is that there are other aliens that have come to Earth looking for that alien. And it's just this great little horror, sci-fi, action comedy, because they're kids, they're teenagers, they don't know any better, and they're trying to act tough, and it leads to this thing, and they trying to mug someone at the beginning of the movie, and they find out that the lady lives in the building, so they end up teaming up with her, and they end up teaming with this drug dealer played by Nick Frost in the movie, and they got this other drug dealer in the movie that's trying to get the kids, but they don't know that there's aliens around. It's so well done, and it's such a good movie. There's these amazing shots in the movie. There's a shot near the end of the movie where John Boyega's character is running away from these aliens, and there's a bunch of aliens behind them, and the way it's shot is so cool. I love Attack the Block. I loved it when I first saw it. I could not stop talking about it. I could not stop recommending it when I first saw it to people who have not seen it or didn't know anything about it or didn't even know it existed, and I still to this day still recommend Attack the Block to anyone who has not seen it, because it is so good. If you have not seen it, go watch it. It's amazing. All right, let's move on to 2002. We have two movies there. Step Up Revolution. Now listen, just hear me out. Step Up movies, they're all the same thing. They're all the same movie. They got to win a competition. They got to save, the local, whatever it is, their homes, their rec centers, whatever. I love these movies. They're awesome. They're cheesy. They're exactly what you expect them to be. They're fine. And I'm okay with that. Every now and then we need those movies. We need a movie where we know what's going to happen in the end. We need a movie where it's like, okay, yeah, fine. We need this ragtag crew that has to come together and do whatever they got to do. It's great. It's awesome. I didn't watch the first Step Up movie. I watched all the other Step Up movies after one. And I still like them. And I'm okay with that. And I like these movies. They're guilty pleasures. They are the ultimate guilty pleasure movies. And that is what Step Up Revolution is. So I just wanted to put that on the list. Let's move on to The Amazing Spider-Man. And that came out in 2002. That's the last movie. Or I'm sorry, 2012. That's the last movie in 2012. The Amazing Spider-Man. This is the first or the second Spider-Man movie in theaters. Obviously after the Tobey Maguire ones, before Tom Holland. And The Amazing Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield, he doesn't get a lot of love. He only got two movies. One of them being decent. In The Amazing Spider-Man, I thought it was decent. I thought it was okay. It was okay for at the time that it was. The best thing about the movie was Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone together. the chemistry together as Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy. We finally get Gwen Stacy in the movies, a proper Gwen Stacy in the movies, and we only get 2 movies, and they end up doing Gwen Stacy pretty dirty in the second one, even though it is from the comics, but they still ended up, whatever. You killed the one thing that made your movies bearable, really, and made the second one bearable, and made the first one bearable as well for those who ended up hating it. But I really enjoyed The Amazing Spider-Man. It wasn't perfect. It was something different than we have gotten before with the Raimi movies, which I appreciated. I thought Andrew Garfield was a pretty decent Peter Parker. He brought more of that charm. He brought more of that sarcasm and cheesy one-liners than Tobey Maguire did, at least in my opinion. And at that time, but yeah, I don't know. I get why people hate it. I do. I get why people don't appreciate it. But I ended up really liking The Amazing Spider-Man, and it's one of those movies that unfortunately it gets hate on because the second one wasn't very good, and the second one suffered from Sony being like, no, we need to be right there with Marvel, and we need to add a bunch of stuff that we don't need into a movie, and do this and that, and it showed, and fans knew it, and it suffered from it. So, but The Amazing Spider-Man, the first one, I thought it was good. I thought it was a decent, it was a short-lived series, but it happened, and I'm okay with that it happened. So let's move on. 2013, I got 3 movies here for you guys. We briefly talked about the second one, but we might as well bring up the first one, The Conjuring. The first Conjuring, scared the crap out of me. It was also one of those movies where it got a rated R rating because it was too scary. And I love hearing that story because it was around the time that the MPAA was getting a little crap because of certain ratings that movies were getting. And The Conjuring was one of those examples because Conjuring got rated R, not because of gore, not because of language, because the movie doesn't have any language or gore. It got rated R because it was too scary for the MPAA. And it got that. And the movie that these news stories were comparing it to was The Lone Ranger, which got a PG-13 despite having a lot of gun violence and despite having a very, very heavily implied, or not implied, I guess it was implied because you don't see it, but it was a very heavily implied massacre that happened in the movie that I believe happened to a Native American group. So, yeah, I don't know. It was one of those things where everyone was kind of up in arms about what was going on. And then Chef was only rated R because of the language, although understandable because that movie did swear a lot, but what have you. But The Conjuring itself, the movie itself, scared the crap out of me. It was one of those movies that scared the crap out of me. The hand clapping thing, which is the thing that everyone remembers, it was the thing that sold the movie to a lot of people just because of the trailer. And then even in the movie itself, it still to this day scares the crap out of us. So there you go, The Conjuring. The next one is The Wolverine. That is, of course, the sequel to X-Men Origins, Wolverine. It tried to, get fans back. It tried to do certain things right, and it brought us the Japan storyline, which everyone really, really loves. Everyone agrees that's one of the more famous and one of the biggest Wolverine storylines in the comic, the one when he goes to Japan. And they try to do that, and it worked a little bit. It worked for the most part, and then it got to the third act, where it became very, very comic booky, and they basically destroyed probably one of the coolest characters in the comics and one of the coolest characters of that arc and one of the coolest villains that Wolverine has ever faced in Silver Samurai, because they ended up making Silver Samurai a mech suit, which I did not appreciate. And I think no one appreciated. But points for the Wolverine for being ambitious as it can be. Because there is a version, there's an unrated version, there's a version that exists that they had to go back and do some reshoots of it. So there is a version out there that's a little different from the one we got in theaters, but what could have been? What could have been? So there you go. There is a Wolverine. And finally, in 2013, Pacific Rim. Now look, I know there's a lot of haters out there for Pacific Rim. I love Pacific Rim. I wouldn't say that it's one of my favorite Guillermo del Toro movies, but it's up there. It's definitely in my top 5. I love Pacific Rim. I think it's from the score to the look of it, to the feel of it, to the tone of it. It doesn't, it's awesome. if I was younger, this would have blown my goddamn mind. If I was younger when I saw this movie, I would have said this movie is the best movie ever made. And there's nothing that can beat this movie. Nothing. And I still, to this day, feel that. But I really love Pacific Rim. It's awesome, man. I mean, it's giant robots fighting monsters. What more do you want? I don't know why I'm so angry. I mean, you know who I'm angry at. Let's move on. 2014. We got 3 movies here. We have Begin Again, which I briefly mentioned where we're talking about Hearts Beat Loud. It's Mark Ruffalo, Keira Knightley, Adam Levine's in there, Haley Steinfeld's also in there. But Mark Ruffalo plays this kind of down on his luck music producer who ends up finding Keira Knightley, who is dating a big music star, and Adam Levine's character. Adam Levine's not really in the movie. He's a supporting character. He pops in like every now and then, but he's just kind of a nothing character, really. But Keira Knightley is also kind of the songwriter, helps him write the songs every now and then. She writes her own songs, and he ends up finding her, and they end up coming together to put this album together because he sees the potential in her. And it's just very, and it's not, it doesn't go the route that you think it goes down. With the 2 characters together, they don't end up together. So I'm gonna put that out there. Everyone's like, oh, they end up together. No, they don't end up together. They end up forming a very good friendship because Mark Ruffalo has this side story with his ex-wife, who, because Haley Steinfeld is his daughter. So he has this whole thing with the ex-wife, the side plot with the ex-wife. But it's a very good movie. I love this. I love the soundtrack they did for it. The songs that they created for the movie are fantastic. They pretty much end up playing on my phone every now and then when I hit shuffle. So it's a very good movie. It was one of those music independent movies that came out during the summer that people may have or may not have missed, and it's very, very good. The next one is Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. This is of course the second movie of the new Planet of the Apes movies. This one was I have a hard time saying which one was the best of the new Planet of the Apes trilogy. I would probably make the argument that it's this one, just because of the Koba storyline that they have. Koba trying to kind of take over leadership from Caesar in this movie, and the whole was Koba right, was Koba wrong arguments. Anytime the movie pops up on TV, my sister, who was also a fan of the movies, she brings up Koba all the time, and we kind of have this agreement or not of whether or not he was right or wrong, and was Caesar right or wrong. But I really like Dawn of the Planet, the new Planet of the Apes movies. I think they're great. I think obviously the effects are amazing. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes kind of, pumped up the effects wise in here. But yeah, I really like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes too. I thought it was really cool. The siege on the city, just the cinematography on that was amazing to look at, to be honest. And finally, in 2014, we have The Purge: Anarchy, the second Purge movie, in my opinion, the best Purge movie. Frank Grillo basically pretty much plays the Punisher. He's pretty much the Punisher in the movie. He's not really the Punisher, but he's pretty much the Punisher. He has a car, he has the long coat, he has all the guns, he has a bunch of guns on him and ammo clips on him. He's basically the Punisher in the movie. But Purge Anarchy, it takes the concept of the first Purge, or it takes the concept of the whole series, but the first Purge took place in a house. This one takes place on the streets of LA. It gets a little bit more into the politicalness of it, because you kind of see, you saw the rich, and the first Purge, the Purge movies in general are political movies, but the first Purge saw this privileged money family get, dragged into the Purge, into their house. This one takes, the Purge movies, all the people who can't afford those big systems, the security systems on the Purge, and puts them out on the street. And it takes, the actions to the street. And that's, I think, where these movies should have always gone. They should have been on the streets, because if you just have them in a house, if you have them secluded in the house, it's not really interesting. And that's what I kind of didn't like about the first Purge movie, was that I didn't really, do, I think, it didn't do the concept justice. Whereas the Purge Anarchy does the concept justice, because you have these characters on the street, then you have them caught by rich people who then have them trying to get purged by some of these rich people and other people that they've hired to, purge their emotions out. But I really love the Purge Anarchy. I think it's great. I think, again, it's the best of the Purge series, and I think it just introduced the fact that Frank Grillo is, you know, one of probably the most underrated action stars of today, because he's awesome in that movie, and I really like The Purge Anarchy. So I just want to say that. All right, 2015, I got 2 movies for you guys. The first one is Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, which introduced Rebecca Ferguson's character, she's awesome. I ended up watching this kind of by accident a couple weeks ago, because it was on TV and I was watching some. I ended up leaving it, like I think it was on FX or something. I ended up leaving it on FX when I was watching something else on streaming, and I went back to the TV and it happened to be on. I was like, what is this? And then I realized it was Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, and I really liked it, man. I think you kind of forget a lot of the time that Mission Impossible, you know, the sequels just try to outdo themselves so much, and they end up becoming just these great movies. And I think Rogue Nation continued that. You know, Mission Impossible 3, and then you have this, and it's you know, just the other series. It's really good, man. You know, Mission Impossible movies are really great. I think anyone who has a problem with Mission Impossible series, I think you just don't like fun. I honestly don't think. Yeah, they have their problems, but they're fun to watch, man. Just enjoy them. All right, the next one in 2015. It's a limited release. It's actually based off a book. It's called Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl. The book is called Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl. The movie is called Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. I don't know why they made that change, but whatever. But I really like the book. I love the book. I think the book is really, really funny. I think it's really great. I was reading it when I was in college, when I was supposed to be reading other stuff, but I ended up reading that instead, and I really, really enjoyed it. But then I watched the movie, and the movie is pretty faithful adaptation. It takes the same concept, so it's these two guys, Earl and the main character, which I'm pretty sure they end up giving a name, but I can't remember what it was. But it's these two characters, the main character and Earl, who love making their own movies. They kind of make their own movies together. Werner Herzog is one of their inspirations, but they end up making these movies together, and then they end up finding and befriending this girl, aka the Dying Girl, who they don't find out right away that she's dying, but they find out later on that she's dying, and it kind of affects their friendship all the way around. It's this just interesting look at these 3 characters and how they deal with it, how they deal with their own situations, and how they deal with, you know, finding out that one of their friends is dying of cancer, and what they do with it. And it's this nice. I don't think it's a fully coming of age story. I think for the most part, it kind of is, but it isn't at the same time. It's kind of just dealing with its own. It's kind of just its own little thing too. That was a poorly worded and poorly put way of how I wanted to describe this movie. I really like this movie too. It's just I don't want to get too into it because I don't want to spoil anything, but the performances in this thing are great too. The Dying Girl is played by Olivia Cooke, who was Artemis in Ready Player One. You had Earl, who was played by, I can't think of his name now. I want to say something Riley. CJ Ryler? I think I want to say, he was Billy in the Power Rangers movie. And then the main character is played by, I believe, Thomas Mann. They do a tremendous job together. And I remember reading the book, and obviously the Dying Girl, it's not really a spoiler. It's in the title of the movie. She does end up dying. But the way they put it in the movie, I believe it was different in the book, because the when she dies in the movie, again, not a spoiler, it's in the title. It really hit me different than when I read the book. And that is what, it's a very beautiful scene, but at the same time it's very harrowing because obviously what happened. But yeah, it hit me different, really different. And that stuck with me after watching it. So there you go. 2015. I'm done. 2016. Let's just move on before I discourage you from watching that movie. I want to shout out Captain Fantastic. That was the one with Viggo Mortensen, where he plays a father to all those kids, and he takes them, you know, across the country and stuff. I was really late to that party watching that movie. I ended up watching it I think it was probably right before the Oscars. I think it was the day of the Oscars when I watched that movie. So I didn't really get a full grasp of it, or I think it might have been after. I can't remember when I watched it. I know I ended up watching it late, but I really enjoyed it. I think it was really great. I think all the kid actors were great in it. I thought Viggo Mortensen was awesome, and of course the only thing everyone remembers about that movie and Viggo Mortensen was the fact that he goes full frontal. If you didn't know that and you want to see that, there you go. But the other movie in 2016 is Star Trek Beyond. I know a lot of people hate the new Star Trek movies. I really liked the first one. The second one was okay. It wasn't awesome. It was very disappointing. Star Trek Beyond, I thought, was probably a good step back into what they were trying to do. Of course, people were kind of already done with the franchise by that point, but I still want to shout that out. But the main thing in 2016 for me was Train to Busan. That is, of course, the South Korean zombie movie, the one on the train. You would think that a zombie movie on a train wouldn't be exciting or enthralling or thrilling. You'd be wrong, because it was. And this is one of those movies where I ended up going to like a movie theater like an hour and a half away just to watch it. And I think me and my brother were the only non-Asian people in the movie theater, and which tends to happen sometimes in some of these movies, because sometimes they only play in one theater, and that's just happens to be the case. But we're in there, we're sitting in there, and we're watching it, and we're like, this is cool, this is awesome, this is really great. And I cannot say how much I love Train to Busan. I think it's fantastic. I think the characters are great. I think the way it's written is amazing. And of course, they're coming out with a sequel called Peninsula, which comes out. It does come out this year. They are releasing it this year in some theaters, if theaters are still open by that point. But they are releasing it on Shudder next year, early next year. So we don't have to wait too long for this. I mean, we've got to wait a while, but not too long, I guess, considering how maybe this year is flying by for some. But it will be coming out on Shudder next year. But Train to Busan, highly recommend you watch it. If you've not watched it, what are you doing? Go watch it. Even if you're not a big zombie movie fan, you still have to watch Train to Busan. It is amazing. All right, let's move on to 2017. We've got quite a few movies here. The first one, War for the Planet of the Apes. Of course, like I mentioned earlier, Planet of the Apes movies. I really liked the new trilogy. I thought War. I think War was. I don't want to say it was a step down. It was definitely different. It was a kind of a different story. You got Woody Harrelson in there. I think it was a good way to show that this was a reboot of the original movies, where it could probably fit into the old movies. But I really liked what they were trying to do. I thought, with the Caesar, what they did with the Caesar character was awesome for this. Woody Harrelson plays this villain. He's a villain. He is just a bad guy. Like, you don't like anything about this guy, because he's a full-flown bad guy in this movie, and it's. So I just wanted to mention that. The next one is Wolf Warrior 2. This is a sequel to the movie Wolf Warrior. It's a foreign movie starring Wu Jin. Frank Grillo's in there. He plays the bad guy because he's always playing bad guy. But I just wanted to mention Wolf Warrior because if you love action movies, especially foreign action movies, Wolf Warrior is the movie for you, because it is just straight up action all the time. So there's that. The next one is Spider-Man Homecoming. Of course, the first movie where Spider-Man is back in the MCU, his first solo movie, sort of, because we have Robert Downey Jr. in there as Tony Stark pops in. But Tom Holland, his own movie, everyone was like, can he lead his own movie? Is he going to be as good as Tobey? Is he going to be as good as Andrew Garfield? No, I wasn't in that. I was going in there, I was going to be like, you know what? I'm going to judge it for what it is. Went in there, had a ton of fun, enjoyed the hell out of it. I thought Tom Holland was very good at it. I know some people are still not sold on him, and that's fine. We're all going to have our own opinions. But I liked it. Michael Keaton there as Vulture appearing for the first time on the big screen, which I thought was great. Yeah, I don't know. I think the thing that sold me, I think, on the movie, especially for Tom Holland as Spider-Man, is kind of when he's trapped under the rubble after, he goes after Vulture for the first time, and he's kind of looking in the mirror, and he doesn't say, "Get up, Peter," when he's trying to, push everything off of him. He's saying, "Come on, Spider-Man." And that is what sold me on his character, because he's not thinking about himself. He's thinking about the character and what the character and what the mask, I guess you can say, means to him and to everyone that he has to save and he has to make proud of. And that's the thing that sold me on him. Saying, he didn't say, "Come on, Peter," he said, "Come on, Spider-Man." And that is what sold me on him as Spider-Man. Just that scene. It's a very small thing, but that's what sold me on. And the next one, the last one is actually not the last one. The next one, I should just say, is Dunkirk. Christopher Nolan. Of course, the events that happen on Dunkirk Beach. All these Allied soldiers, on the beach trying to escape. And then you have the story of people going to get some of the soldiers out when they ran out of ships to take them out of. You got the dog fights in the sky. It's just this amazing story, and the score that's just constantly playing over the movie. The broken kind of time frame of the storytelling is amazing. I kind of don't realize it at first, but then you start realizing like, oh, this is taking place when this is taking place. I think it's great. I think it's awesome. I really liked it. I saw it twice in a very loud theater, and I think that's the only way you can watch that movie to really get the full effect. So there you go. And the final movie in 2017 is The Big Sick. That was, of course, a movie with Kumail Nanjiani, based on his real story, meaning his wife, who wrote the movie, Emily V. Gordon. Emily in the movie being played by someone else who I cannot remember her actress's name, and she's awesome, and I didn't write it down. But you have that story being told, and the story itself is amazing. It's an amazing story. Kumail, meets this girl. They fall for each other. She doesn't tell him that she is extremely sick and she has this rare disease, and she ends up kind of breaking things off for a little bit, and then she ends up in the hospital, and Kumail doesn't really know what to do. So he still likes this girl, so he goes there, and he eventually meets her parents, who in the movie are played by Holly Hunter and Ray Romano, who are fantastic in the movie. It's a great movie. It's a great story. It kind of flips the romance genre on its head, which I really appreciate. The romantic comedy on its head, genre too, on its head. So I really liked it. I thought it was one of the best movies of the summer when it came out in 2017. I think it pretty much still stayed on my favorite movies of the year at the end of that year, because it was really good. So if you have not seen The Big Sick, highly recommend you go watch it. And finally, 2018, got 3 movies for you guys. Mission Impossible Fallout gets a special mention here. It was the last Mission Impossible movie. You got Henry Cavill in there, doing his thing, the whole, pumping up his arms like it's a shotgun, and that bathroom fight scene was awesome. It was amazing. It was yeah. And then you had the final fight between Tom Cruise and the villain of the movie, which I'm not going to spoil in case you haven't watched it, but it takes place on a mountaintop. I'll just say that, or not even a mountaintop. It just takes place on a mountain. Just put it that way. It's great. I really loved Fallout. I really love the movies. Like I mentioned, I love the Mission Impossible movies because they keep trying to outdo each other every time, and it just works. Another special shout out is Sorry to Bother You, directed by Boots Riley. That is a movie that I did not expect to go where it went. It's just one of those movies where you're just like, okay, what am I getting into? You sit down, you start watching, you see the trailers. The trailers, talk about, black people having to use their white voice to, sound less threatening and to, achieve, greatness and to get that promotion in today's world.
Hey, young blood, let me give you a tip. Use your white voice.
Man, I ain't got no white voice.
Oh, come on, you know what I mean. You have a white voice in there, you can use it. It's like when you pulled over by the police.
Oh, no, I just use my regular voice when that happens. I just say, back the fuck up off the car and don't nobody get
All
hurt.
right, man, I'm just trying to give you some game. You want to make some money here? Then read the script with a white voice.
People say I talk with a white voice anyway, so why ain't it helping me out?
Well, you don't talk white enough. I'm not talking about Will Smith's wife. I'm talking about the real deal, like this young blood.
Hey, Mr. Kramer, this is Langston from Regal View. I didn't catch you at the wrong time, did I?
And it's like, okay, yeah, you get that. And then you get to a point in the movie where it kind of just changes, where it goes to a different place. And it becomes like, what the fuck am I watching now? Because that's kind of what happens in the movie. And it gets to that point, and I'm just like, this is completely different. And I'm not alone, because everyone in my theater was like, what the fuck is going on? And they audibly, out loud, when that moment hit, were like, what the fuck is going on? That, to me, I think perfectly explains what this movie's about. And that's probably why it's called Sorry to Bother You. It takes double there's probably a few reasons why it says sorry to bother you in a few occasions. And yeah, it's one of those movies. It's just one of those out there movies, and I would recommend you watch it. Just be prepared to say what the fuck is going on a lot. And finally, the last movie of 2018 and of the July monthly rewind is Teen Titans Go to the Movies. Yes, Teen Titans Go to the Movies. I watched the old Teen Titans show. I didn't watch I've caught like a couple episodes of it, but I never really watched Teen Titans Go, which was basically the same voice cast, just a different animation style. I thought it kind of went from the kind of moody, somewhat sort of like the old Batman cartoons animation style to a more kid-friendly, bright, vibrant style, which doesn't take away anything from the show. I mean, it could be very good, but I didn't really watch it. And then I saw the trailer for Teen Titans Go to the Movies, and I was like, that looks kind of fun. You know, it looks interesting. It could probably be some dumb fun. And my brother and I went to go watch it. Again, it was like a week or two after it came out in theaters. We didn't really have anything to do. There was really nothing, grabbing our attention at the movie theater. So we're like, let's go watch Teen Titans Go to the Movies. Why not? We have A-lists. Let's just, use the go watch that. And we went to go watch it. And I had so much fun watching it. I admittedly will wholeheartedly admit that we saw Teen Titans Go to the Movies twice in theaters. I enjoyed the hell out of that movie. It is funny. It knows what it is. It's not afraid to make fun of itself. It's not afraid to make fun of the state of superhero movies. It's not afraid to make fun of the other DC movies in the world. It's so much fun. It does not take itself seriously. It knows exactly what it's doing and knows exactly what it is. And I loved it for it.
Don't worry, brah. If Alfred got a movie, you must be next.
Huh. Right. My movie must be slated for next summer.
Coming next summer, a new hero will light up the night.
Please be me, please be me, please be me, please be me.
It's the car.
Oh, they did the car before you, bro.
This is ridiculous.
Batmobile, the movie. Coming vroom.
That actually does look pretty good.
I do love the Batman's automobile.
They must be saving the best for last then. I'm sure my movie is next summer.
Coming next summer, the story of Batman's greatest ally.
That's me. That must be me.
And best friend in the whole wide world.
Finally! Thank you for making a movie about...
Utility Belt.
What?
The movie.
Teen Titans Go to the Movies was one of my favorite movies of 2018. It was one of my surprises of 2018, but it was also one of my favorite movies of 2018. It is so utterly fun and ridiculous, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. The music in it is great. There's a song called Upbeat, the Upbeat song, or something like that, or You Gotta Be Upbeat. The scene in the movie is so fun, and then when you realize who's actually singing the other verse of the song, because I didn't realize it at first, and then I realized it after the fact. It's just, it's so ridiculous. It's so much fun. I loved it. I've even caught myself watching a few of the Teen Titans Go episodes since then. It's just a lot of fun, man. It's if you want some wholesome content that's funny, that's, it is taking itself just not too seriously, maybe just a little bit serious, but not too much. Teen Titans Go in the movies, man. You'll have a lot of fun with that. I had a lot of fun with that. I will proudly admit and stamp my flag that I had fun watching Teen Titans Go to the movies. So that's it, everybody. So there's the movies for June and July in the monthly rewind. What are some of your movies that stood out? Maybe some of these movies stood out to you. Maybe they stood out for different reasons. Maybe they stood out for the same reasons as I did. Let me know what your thoughts are on these movies. Do you remember any of these movies? Do you remember where you were when you watched these movies? That's kind of what this whole series is all about. Kind of, the different, just to break up the weekly roundup of news, podcasts, and stuff like that. So that's what it's all about, to remember the good old times that we've had watching movies, and maybe even some that we've forgotten about. So next time, of course, we'll look at movies that came out in August. I promise to record that earlier, maybe even at the beginning of August, so I can have that just ready to go when it finally comes out. So that's it, everybody. Thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast of the monthly rewind of June and July. I appreciate you guys listening. I like doing these series. Hopefully you guys enjoy listening to them. Usually I try to do one, so I'm not speeding through all these movies and I can really just dig deep down and do all that stuff. But I don't want to make too long of a podcast because that's just not who I am. I don't want to make too long of a podcast. And if I had someone else here with me, I would love, then it would be okay. But if it's just me, you probably don't want to hear my voice for that long. I don't want to hear my voice for that long, and I had to edit these things. So it probably says a lot about me more than it does about the podcast, which... Okay, anyway, thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. Be sure to check out all the links down below in the description/show notes area. The podcast is officially now on Spotify, which is so cool. It took so long for me to do it, even though it was fairly easy. The podcast is now on Spotify, so you can listen to the podcast now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, and now Spotify, which is a whole hell of a lot of fun. All those links will be down below in the description/show notes area. If you want to go hit that follow button on any one of those platforms to listen to the podcast, keep up to date. To keep up to date on the podcast, you can go to the Twitter. I'm about to say Facebook. I don't really use the Facebook page anymore. You can go to the Twitter for the podcast. I'm going to start using that a hell of a lot more now that, we're pretty much guaranteed lockdown here on quarantine, stay-at-home orders and stuff like that. So go check that out. I'll be updating that as frequently as I can with movie news and stuff like that, and thoughts and my thoughts on certain movies and stuff. So I'll start doing polls up there too for stuff, and I'm just gonna update the hell out of that thing. I'm gonna use that thing. I've had it for so long, I haven't really used it. I'm gonna start using it. So go give us a follow over there. Anything else down below? WordPress is down there as well. Instagram's down there. It's my only personal. I combine the personal with the podcast. So it's only one Instagram page you have to follow, and that's it. All right, I'm rambling now, so I apologize. The room's starting to get hot. So I closed the door, and it's starting to get hot. So thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. Go listen to wherever you prefer, and be sure to hit that like, subscribe, follow button wherever you are. Please leave me a rating and review no matter where you are as well. Helps out the podcast in the long run. And I will see you guys next time. Be safe. Be good, people. Wear a mask. Wash your hands. 6 feet. Just don't be a dick. That's the moral of all of this that's going on. Don't be a dick. That's it, everybody. Thank you guys so much. And remember, as always, go watch some movies.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.